VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here from VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to our nation's borders, the last 12 months have been quite remarkable. I mean, the last administration told us repeatedly that Congress would have to act to reform our immigration policies, our immigration laws, before the borders could be secured. Well, that turned out to be quite a falsehood. I mean, our borders are more secure than ever. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is working to purge from our nation those that they term to be the worst of the worst. Daily documentation is provided of those who are being apprehended, and the list of criminal records is both stunning and atrocious. While some communities and states offer full cooperation, there are others that are causing extreme chaos, disruption, violence, vandalism, and yes, even assaults. Well, providing comment on these and related issues, we welcome back Mark Krikorian. Mark is a nationally recognized expert on immigration issues. He is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. They're an independent, nonpartisan research organization that examines and critiques the impact of immigration on the United States, both legal and illegal immigration. He has testified many times before Congress, has published articles on many outlets as well. Mark, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk.
Always happy to be here.
So let's begin with a major legal win for the Trump administration from the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals late last week, Friday. Share with our listeners what transpired.
This was basically an interpretation of the law that previous administrations had not pursued. But what happened is that this is the Circuit Court, so this is the appeals court, where they're a little more sensible than some of these lower court federal judges, ruled that the administration does, in fact, have the authority, in fact, have the requirement to detain all illegal entrants. It doesn't have to give them bond and let them go, even if they're caught inside the country, because the law requires the detention not only of people who have just crossed illegally or who are trying to use fake documents to get through a border port of entry, but also people inside the country who were never formally let in. In other words, border jumpers who've been in the middle of the country for many years still are required, the administration is authorized to, under the law, to detain them rather than to give them a bond and let them go. Because when you do that, they know they're going to be removed, so they disappear. They're in the wind. The reason you detain illegal aliens is not punishment. It's not jail. It's to make sure that they're actually able, at hand to send home when the work is all done. So this was a significant win for the administration, and really it shouldn't have been a win, and it shouldn't have to have been a win, because it's just what the law says.
Right.
It's just that there's been such pushback, what they call lawfare, legal warfare against anything the administration is trying to do. This was a good sign. Another one of the other circuits is probably going to find the other way. So the Supreme Court is going to end up having to decide this at some point, this year or next year.
Well, I saw it was Iowa's Solicitor General Eric Wesson, and in his words, he sent out, I believe it was on X, called this win enormous. He said it was the first federal court to address President Trump's expedited removal efforts, and this court siding with the administration. But that was his word, enormous.
Yeah, and he's right. And but again, I have to emphasize, this shouldn't have to be enormous. This is only an enormous deal. This is only a big deal because so much of the judiciary has been cooperating with this, in effect, with these rioters in the streets, for all practical purposes, in trying to do anything possible to prevent any illegal alien from ever being sent home. It's almost crazy when you think about it.
Right.
So, yes, there's no question this was a big win. but it's a sign of how bad things are that this had to be a big win.
Well, also, I understand yesterday the Ninth Circuit gave another win to the Trump administration, and it deals with temporary protected status for countries like Nepal, Honduras, and Nicaragua.
Right. This was a different issue, but it's very important because there is something called temporary protected status. It's in the law, TPS, and the whole point is, just like the name suggests, it's to temporarily let people who are here illegally, when some terrible thing happens in their home country, temporarily let them kind of spin their wheels here before they're sent home because the airport is closed down because of a hurricane, that kind of thing. Well, it's basically just turned into a permanent amnesty because every administration before Trump was just renewing the grant of temporary protected status every 12 or 18 months. They just renew them over and over and over again. There are people from Honduras that this specifically applies to who've been here since, I think it's the early 2000s. I mean, it's over 20 years. It's insane. And so what the Trump administration is trying to do is put the temporary back in temporary protected status. They're not even throwing anyone out. They're just saying, hey, when this grant of TPS, which, extends until this date, it's 12 months or 18 months from now, whatever it is, when that ends, we're not going to renew it. And then you're going to go back to whatever status you had. Your work permit will turn into a pumpkin, as it were, and you're going to have to go home. And that, again, is what the lower courts, as well as the activists and all the rest of them, have been trying to prevent and doing anything they can. And so the Ninth Circuit, which is the West Coast Circuit and much more liberal, generally speaking, basically found for the administration that says, look, the law says that the Homeland Security Secretary is allowed to end a grant of temporary protected status. They have to explain, why. The conditions that warranted it to begin with are now over, whatever it is, which they all are. But that they have the authority to do it. Again, a big win, but a win that shouldn't have even had to happen because the law says in black and white that this Homeland Security Secretary is authorized to discontinue or not renew TPS if that's what they think is the right thing to do. It gives them the discretion, and they're trying to, the activists, including the ones in judicial robes, have been trying to prevent them from doing it. So this is a big win, but another indication of how bad things have been for so many years.
Sure. And now, so this named 3 countries, but there's many more countries that have a TPS.
Oh, yeah. It was specifically about Honduras, Nepal, and Nicaragua because I think they're expiring at the same time, something like that. I forget why those 3 of them. But yeah, El Salvador, there are something like, I think it's 200,000 people now, maybe more, from El Salvador, illegal immigrants from 25 years ago, who have this temporary protected status, the main thing of which is you get a work permit and a Social Security number. Well, El Salvador is now the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, you'd rather live there than Detroit if you're worried about your personal safety. And yet we just keep renewing this status. So this is, and Venezuela is the other big one that Biden kind of as a going away gift to Trump granted Venezuelan illegals temporary protected status, and that's several 100,000 people. So this decision will be important for not just the 3 countries involved, but for a whole. I mean, I think it's 12 or 15 countries. I haven't checked lately. In other words, illegals from those countries that have this special protection. And it's this is going to end. This decision really makes sense. And the only last point I'd make on this is that ICE can decide on its own to halt deportations if there's some earthquake or something in your country. That's just, they can say, sure, okay, we're going to hold off for 30 days, 60 days until we see if, things have kind of stabilized enough to be able to send people back. They don't need to use this status. The whole reason for this status is to get work permits and Social Security numbers to illegal aliens. And the sooner we get rid of it, the better.
Mark Krikorian with us today from the Center for Immigration Studies. And Mark, it's just amazing to see the sharp decrease in encounters at the border as the Trump presidency marked, 1 year in office. Last Wednesday, we received a press release from Department of Homeland Security indicating that January numbers marked a 93% below the historic average, the lowest encounters ever for a month of January. They report that the daily average of encounters at the southwest border in the last administration averaged 5,110 a day. Today, that averaged 196 per day. That's huge.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely huge. And in fact, the head of Customs and Border Protection, which is the part of DHS that includes the Border Patrol as well as the inspectors at the ports of entry. His name is Rodney Scott, and he testified today on this. And, yeah, I mean, it's no question that this is extremely low. In fact, I think they're even underselling it to some degree because I think we're seeing the lowest level of illegal crossings on the Mexican border since the 19th century.
Wow.
And the reason I say that is that the stats weren't very good back then, but also we had no idea who was crossing illegally. And we didn't have cameras everywhere and all that stuff. Now we pretty much know everybody who comes over illegally. We don't catch all of them. There's still a few that get away, but we know about all of them. We got cameras everywhere. We got all of the sensors in the ground. And so we really are, I think, at the lowest numbers since the 19th century. The thing, though, is this doesn't mean the problem is solved.
Right.
It means that we have gotten hold of it. We've sort of pushed it back into the box, if you will, but it's always going to want to get out. The price of border security is internal vigilance. And, if we let up just a little bit, it'll start right up again. So the reason I even say that is that people think that, okay, we can just move on to the next thing. No. Yeah. Border Patrol needs to keep up what it's doing indefinitely if we're going to maintain this kind of secure, relatively secure border.
Yeah, for instance, if indeed somebody like Kamala Harris, last border czar, or put in charge of the borders there, get things fixed, if she would run for president and take the presidency, she can virtually undo everything and put it back to where it was under the Biden administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important that the Trump administration try, to some degree anyway, to get some changes into statute. In other words, get Congress to pass laws.
Right.
Because Congress could always pass different laws in the future, but it's a lot harder to do.
Right.
Whereas if you have a memo or an executive order or something, President Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom can just undo it, and they'll just blow the border open all over again.
Another aspect of this report, 9 straight months of zero releases. That's also huge.
Oh, absolutely. Because under Biden, all these people were coming across, and it was millions of people, and they were basically just all let go. I mean, they took their picture, they gave them a piece of paper, and they said, show up at ICE in 2034 or some such thing like that. It was insane. So yeah, and one of the reasons you can make sure that you don't have to release anybody is that the numbers are low anyway. In other words, if millions of people are coming over, what the Biden people, and actually this happened under the precedent was set under Obama. They said, look, the law requires us to detain all these people because it does. But there's just too many of them, and we don't have the space, so we're just going to let them go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there's no excuse for that. Once you crack down, then you can detain everybody, and that deters future people.
Speaking with us today, Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies. Their website, friends, if you want to stay informed what's happening at our borders, CIS.org. That's CIS.org. We're back in just 1 minute here on Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and creation researcher with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, where is the Garden of Eden today?
Chris, we don't know. The location of the Garden of Eden is forever lost. After Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, God placed an angel to guard the entrance so that no one could go there again. There is no such place on earth that's guarded by a fearsome angel. The Bible does tell us, however, that in the days of Noah, the world was totally restructured by that great flood. All landmarks of the previous world were destroyed. The earth was completely restructured by that flood, so we wouldn't expect to find the Garden of Eden. While the names of the rivers that are given in Genesis do correspond to modern-day river names, They don't actually correspond to any known rivers. Chris, let's go back to Genesis and think carefully about what it teaches there.
For more information, visit our website at icr.org. I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
Securing our nation, our topic today here on Crosstalk. Mark Krikorian is our guest. He is the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, their website, CIS.org. And Mark, we were just talking about the sharp decrease in encounters at the border. We were talking about the zero releases from the border as well. But I also want to point out the record drug seizures. In January, they seized 816 pounds of fentanyl, 12,241 pounds of methamphetamine, 5,386 pounds of cocaine, and 17,639 pounds of marijuana. That's a lot of drugs off our streets.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the reasons that the Border Patrol, as well as the inspectors at the ports of entry, have enjoyed this kind of success is precisely because illegal immigration is down. So they're now able to focus way more on actually, checking more of the trucks that are coming over, grabbing more of the people coming between the ports of entry who may be carrying loads of drugs, that kind of thing. So, although, the drugs and immigration aren't the same issue, at the border, they really are pretty closely related, because if you have better control over the border to prevent illegal people coming over, you also are going to have better control of the border to prevent illegal items, things, drugs mainly, but all kinds of other things people try to smuggle over. I mean, people try to smuggle, endangered parrots or something to sell them to people, or agricultural products that could have diseases in them. And so it's basically the point of border control is to keep out anything or anybody that we don't want to come in. Mm-hmm. And so when we do one part of that better, we do all of it better.
So what happens to the drivers caught driving this stuff in or attempting to? Are they apprehended? Are charges filed against them?
Oh, sure. I mean, it obviously depends on the particulars of the, circumstances. Sometimes there are people who don't even know they have drugs in the car. That happens where, they'll be in Mexico to go and whatever, go to a restaurant or go do something. Or maybe they're a Mexican-American, they have a relative, and they're going over there, and then people will stick dope, secretly somewhere in their car. That does happen. Now, probably a lot of people say that, hey, I didn't know that was there. It's not mine, when in fact they knew perfectly well what they were doing. So, yes, a lot of those, you're a drug smuggler at that point. Now, you're a low-level drug smuggler probably. The question is who's your boss, who's paying you, and all that. But yeah, absolutely, you're not off the hook just because, because you're just driving the drugs over. You're the reason they're getting into the country.
Every day, Department of Homeland Security is sending out a listing of the worst of the worst, the apprehensions that they have made. And Mark, I've read the crimes committed, and I find it so appalling. I mean, these are horrendous things that these people have done here in our country, and sometimes coming to our country from another country, having done these things. And what is just so amazing to me is the citizens, the people who are protesting on our streets, with committing all sorts of carnage in order to keep these violent offenders here. I mean, something doesn't add up right there.
Yeah, no, it is preposterous. I mean, the first thing I think it's important to point out is that everybody who's illegal is deportable. I actually am not wild about this worst of the worst rhetoric because, yes, obviously, child rapists should be deported after they finish their sentence. I mean, I'm all for executing them personally, but if we don't execute them as when they finish their sentence, yes, obviously they should be thrown out of the country. But, if CBS News just did a report this week and said only 14% or whatever are, of the people deported or in detention involved in violent crimes. What they're basically, but in violent crimes, they're not including things like drunk driving, selling child pornography, burglary. I want those people out too,
Right.
And even regular illegals, because most of them aren't raping anybody or anything like that, but they're still committing a whole series of federal crimes, not just jumping the border, that's a federal crime, but ID theft, Social Security fraud, tax fraud, perjury, all kinds of stuff. And frankly, yes, you want to make sure that you don't ignore the child rapist who has to get deported. When, if you got two people in front of you, one's a rapist, one's just a working stiff with a fake ID, if you have to choose one, you're going to want to deport the rapist, obviously. Mm-hmm. But ICE has all kinds of money now, all kinds of resources. There's no reason they should be sticking just to the worst of the worst. But right. To get back to your original question, it is unbelievable to me that people are saying, no, absolutely not. We want these predators, sexual predators, to be able to stay in the United States after they finish their sentences. No, sorry. They're illegal aliens. They served their sentences. A lot of these guys did go to jail. But then when they're released, they're like, yeah, here's your $10 for the bus ride and have a nice day. No, sorry. They should be handed straight over to ICE and sent home as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned CBS, and I know, was it just Face of the Nation? They had on the Texas Republican Representative Tony Gonzalez, and he stood behind the enforcement of our laws, and he was, the host was shocked. Here is a congressman, and where is his compassion in all of this? And we find often the media will find these end little stories and really try to pull at the heartstrings of America to accept illegal immigration.
Yeah, even those stories of people where they'll pick somebody who's, not a rapist or murderer and say, oh, he's lived here for many years and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's one guy somebody recently featured. He came in on a visa. He's from Ireland, so you can't even say, well, this is some kind of race thing. He came in on what's called visa waiver. So you don't need a visa from a lot of countries in Europe. And it's like if you're only here for like less than 90 days. And it's the same thing for us there. Like I go to France or to Italy or I go to Hungary a lot. I don't need a visa, but I only stay for, a few days. This guy came in on the visa waiver, and part of the deal is that you don't get to challenge your deportation if you overstay your visa. Well, he did that 20 years ago. He just ignored it and stayed anyway. And now he's saying, oh, I want to challenge it in court. I'm sorry, you signed your rights away on that. And getting away with breaking the law for 20 years, that doesn't really mean, you get to keep staying here. So my point is, even the sob stories are usually incomplete. They're not telling you what's really going on.
There's another aspect to all of this, too, and, rogue judges making decisions. Washington Times just had a story on taxpayers finding themselves on the hook for bringing back illegal immigrants who judges say, hey, they were wrongfully deported. I guess there's a federal judge in California that is trying to undeport 2 migrant families. The ACLU is asking yesterday as well, another judge in Washington, to force DHS to pay to undeport as many as 137 individuals that the Trump administration flew out under the Alien Enemies Act. This undeporting issue is becoming an issue from what I believe to be many rogue judges.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, there's the unofficial motto of the immigration lawyers is it ain't over until the alien wins. So none of this surprises me at all. I mean, it's the persistence is remarkable, but really the anti-borders folks, whether they're immigration lawyers, whether they're rioters in the streets, whether they're judges, they don't believe the American people have the right to keep anybody out of the country. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. This is not an issue of, well, the law says this, and they have to have that due process and all that. That's all just pretext on their part. They don't think that you or I and the rest of our fellow citizens operating through our constitutional process have the right to say no to anybody. And so, that explains why we had the Biden administration doing what it's doing. And that also underlies this idea that we should be undeporting people, which is just, it's almost like something that Babylon Bee would write, and yet it's the real world.
Yeah. Comment on Minneapolis. I mean, we have seen things in that city that, again, just unbelievable, jaw-dropping. We saw the invasion of the city's church take place there, the constant barrage, the riots on the street, and there's certainly a change in leadership there in Minneapolis, and some are saying because of the looks like a drawdown is going to be happening, that the protesters are winning this. Give us your perspective. What's going on in Minneapolis?
Yeah, just to begin with, those people are not protesters. Protesters hold up signs and say, we want this, we want that.
Good point.
Vote this way. These guys are rioters. They're seditious actors using violence to stop enforcement of immigration laws. And no, they've not won. The issue, though, was that they had created conditions that were causing the administration to lose the information war, if you will, because the point of these radicals in the streets was to sway enough of the people in the middle who want immigration enforcement, but were uncomfortable with, what they were seeing on TV, and especially those two people who were killed, which, it's tragic, but honestly, they brought their fate upon themselves. I mean, they were not murdered. But the president, I think, rightly said, look, this is killing us with folks in the middle of the electorate. And if we lose public support, then we can't keep up the stuff we're doing. So what he did was not retreat. What he did was send in Tom Homan to take over the process. And that, I'd have to say, kind of professionalized the operation, because there were people in the administration, I include the Secretary of Homeland Security as well, who were basically talking irresponsibly. They were calling people domestic terrorists, which, arguably, maybe not, but, this was...
Turning up the temperature.
They were turning up the temperature. The rhetoric was too hot. Mm-hmm. And that just fed into these rioters and what they wanted. So what he did was sent Homan in, and just Tom Homan, who's the immigration czar anyway, but they sent him in to run this. And Homan has been a cop for his whole career. He was a patrol cop in a little town in upstate New York. Then he was in the Border Patrol. He's been in ICE. He's been at headquarters doing stuff. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's a grown-up. And a lot of other people who were, holding press releases and what have you were not law enforcement professionals. Let me just put it that way. And so what he's done is not, stop things. What he's doing is the way you should do immigration enforcement, where basically nobody really notices. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the drawdown, because they had a huge number of people they'd sent in. And I think some of that was political. It was in response to that Somali fraud thing, which you notice nobody's talking about now.
Right.
And so what he did was he talked to the jails, county jails, and said, look, he got them to agree to hand over illegal alien criminals that they arrest for their own reasons, got them to agree to hand them over to ICE. And so he said, because of that, I talked to Tom last week, I think, or the week before, and he said, we don't need all these people now. And they were sent up from other places, from L.A., from Atlanta, whatever. There's plenty of illegal aliens there. Yeah, they need help down there, too. So the drawdown is just making it more efficient to enforce the law. It's not retreating on law enforcement.
Tom Homan, a matter of fact, called it unprecedented cooperation that he is getting now from those jails. So, friends, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back. Much more information to follow in the next segment. Stay with us. This is Crosstalk. And Mark Krikorian, our guest today, CIS.org is the website.
Pastor Ken Spilger was discouraged. His church was not growing like he desired, and he wanted God to do something. He was invited to fly to a pastor's conference. On the way back, the plane hit trees just short of the runway. It crashed and erupted into a fireball. The pilot and two other pastors were killed instantly. Ken Spilger was the sole survivor of the crash, and was pulled from the burning wreckage of the plane. He spent months at a hospital's burn unit. Kin's story is documented in Pulled from the Burning, a powerful documentary that shows how God changed his life, his family, and his church. Pulled from the Burning is available for a donation of $15. The set includes a Blu-ray disc, a DVD, and a digital download. For Pulled from the Burning, call VCY America, 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. With us today is Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies, and we're just commenting on Minneapolis. It's been a whole program. We've done programs on Minneapolis, but Mark, what people may not realize is that other states are cooperating, so we don't have these big protests. Yesterday, DHS reported West Virginia has been working with them and has led them to 650 illegal aliens arrested in the last couple of weeks, including drug traffickers, violent offenders, and burglars, and yet we don't have all the violent protests on the streets over this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's states, most states cooperate with ICE because law enforcement agencies cooperate with each other. It's only when the politicians who reject immigration enforcement get involved that you end up with these kind of problems.
This week, they're talking of a potential government shutdown, and that's because of the funding bill for Department of Homeland Security, which is beyond this. It's our borders, it's TSA, it's a lot. I believe Coast Guard is under that as well. FEMA, yeah.
FEMA, Coast Guard, yep.
And so there's a lot of negotiating going back and forth. Certainly matters like they don't want agents to wear face masks. I see a federal judge blocked California law that would have banned these masks for ICE agents, but several sticking points that are between the administration and the likes of Chuck Schumer. Comment on what's going on there.
It's kind of odd because it's about the objection the Democrats are making and the things they're demanding would basically shut down ICE. I mean, that's the point. Their goal is to prevent ICE, essentially abolish ICE without getting rid of the agency. The thing is that the funding tool they're trying to use isn't going to work because ICE has been separately funded through the big, beautiful bill from last year. So what they're doing is saying, we demand you basically dismantle ICE, or we're going to stop funding for the Coast Guard and FEMA and TSA. That's kind of what they're saying. It's kind of loopy, and I can't believe the administration is, or the Republicans in Congress are going to go along with this. I think there could be, they might want to offer the Dems some kind of safe, face-saving thing because the cameras, the body cameras, is something they're really saying they're demanding, body cameras on ICE agents. It's like the ICE agents have wanted body cameras all along.
Yeah, that's to their benefit.
Yeah, because it shows that the people they're dealing with are crazy. And the regular police, this has been an issue. Like BLM was pushing body cams. And so there were more and more body cams, and they're showing that the people they're pulling over are like running at them with knives. I mean, they're crazed. And so you don't hear a lot about these, supposed shootings of peace-loving people with their hands up anymore.
Right.
And I think the Democrats kind of miscalculating by insisting on body cameras for ICE agents. But that's the kind of thing maybe the Republicans will say, okay, well, we'll give you this, but we're not giving you the rest of it. And if you want to shut down TSA and the Coast Guard and FEMA over this, be our guest. So we'll see. Friday is when the money runs out for DHS. They had a temporary extension. And so we'll see if there's a shutdown, I think, starting at the end of Friday.
Right. Let's hit another issue, and something that's appalling to me is the indoctrination that's happening within the educational system. We have seen, last week I aired some audio clips of a preschool class where the teachers in the public preschool, were encouraging, coaching students on being against ICE. I have an article from the Daily Caller yesterday, photos from Ann Arbor, Michigan, suggesting some elementary schools have been involved in getting young students to protest, to say they hate ICE. We have seen high schools dismiss classes to go out on the streets as well. It's appalling what's going on in the education system.
Yeah, and, it's not surprising because, remember, who is the chief spokesman, the one you see in the news all the time for teachers' unions? It's Randy Weingarten, head of the American Federation of Teachers, who is a crazed left-winger. I don't mean she's liberal. I don't mean she thinks abortion laws should be more lax and taxes should be higher. She's, a couple of steps short of being a communist. I think I'm comfortable saying that. So that kind of thing trickles down, or maybe trickles up. Maybe that's why she's head of it. So this really is a problem. Obviously, it's a problem in, places like Ann Arbor, which are pretty left-wing because it's a college town. And I don't know that there's a good solution for this. Most kids are always going to go to public school because there's a lot of kids, and homeschooling and private schools, Protestant or Catholic or secular or Jewish or anything else, are always going to be significant. But most kids are going to be going to public school just because of the numbers. And so I'm not sure how you fix this kind of thing, but it's pretty important because if you're teaching kids essentially to hate their country, because that's what we're talking about.
Right,
here.
right.
When they grow up, then what? You know what I mean? What kind of citizens can they be?
And speaking of that issue, there's another story from Not the Bee of an Indiana teen arrested after threatening to shoot up school because some of the students supported ICE. This indoctrination and grooming of their minds to hate ICE is having wreaking great consequence as a result.
And politicians have some responsibility here. When you have, governors, senators, congressmen talking about, well, ICE is the Gestapo and they're murdering people in the streets and all that stuff, that affects people, ordinary people who might be predisposed to that kind of attitude anyway, but they're like, geez, well, this guy's governor, this is senator, he wouldn't be making this up, it must be true. And so, leaders matter and what they say matters. And you start calling people Nazis long enough, some of your followers are going to say, well, if I were around, I would have killed Hitler if I could have, and so I'm going to go kill some Nazis. And you end up with violence in the streets. It's just, these guys don't understand, I think, or don't appreciate, most of them, what forces they're setting in motion. Some of them do. Some of the real revolutionaries, and there are people like that who basically want to dismantle the system, the Constitution itself. They know what they're doing. But, guys like Tim Walz, he's sort of a doofus. Let's face it. But I don't think he has any idea what his rhetoric is, unleashing.
Yeah.
And that's really going to be a problem going forward.
Friends, we're going to open our phone lines. I've got just a couple more issues I'm going to run by our guest today. But if you have a question you'd like to make, or post here, or a brief comment, our number to crosstalk, 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. Mark, another area here is the horrible, horrible collisions taking place with illegal aliens behind the wheel. Most recently in Indiana, several Amish were killed. I see, we've seen this happen in other states, and now Florida is eliminating a foreign language option on the driver's test, saying, no, the driver's test will be in English. How critical is that?
Oh, it's real important. The idea that we're giving driver's license tests to people who can't read and understand English is insane. Okay, maybe a stop sign you can learn, because even in foreign countries, the stop signs look the same. But lane closed, road closed, exit here, whatever it is, if you can't read that stuff, what business do you have operating this 2-ton hunk of metal driving down the road? It's just nuts. The problem is, obviously, this is good for Florida to do this. I just interviewed Governor DeSantis last week about this. Is one of the things he brought up. The problem is your driver's license is good in any state. So California can give, driver's license tests in Laotian or Cambodian, and that person, once he has a license, he gets to drive wherever he wants. And so, this is something that Congress may need to try to address, but there's always problems that states have, their independent authorities over a lot of things. So this is a good step forward, but there's a lot more progress to be made.
Yeah, and many truck drivers being removed off the road as a result, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one other matter here, and lines are all packed out here, but it deals with an important case coming up before the U.S. Supreme Court April 1, dealing with birthright citizenship.
Yeah, there's the president last year issued an executive order saying that he was interpreting the constitutional provision on birthright citizenship as not including the kids born to people who are either illegal aliens or here on some kind of temporary status, like tourists. And so he instructed, basically what it amounts to is he instructed State Department and Social Security not to give passports and Social Security numbers to newborns of people who didn't have at least one parent who was a citizen or a green card holder. And it was immediately, held up. And that's one time where you do want things to be frozen until it's resolved in the courts. And so the Supreme Court's going to hear the case April 1st.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's two things here, two questions. One is the issue, should we change the way we do citizenship? And in the modern world, I think we do. We didn't have birthright. We didn't have birth tourism, 200 years ago, because there was, no way to get across the ocean easily. We didn't have illegal immigration. Now we do. The issue, though, the Supreme Court's going to deal with is, does the president have the authority to make that change with an executive order? And I think the ruling is going to be, we're not going to decide on the substance, the merits of this issue, what the 14th Amendment provision here means. We're just deciding the president can't do it on his own. Congress passes a law and sends it to us. It passes a law and it's challenged in court. Then we'll decide whether this is constitutional or not. But for now, we're just deciding the president can't do this on his own. I think I'm willing to put money on that's what they're going to decide.
Friends, our number to crosstalk, 800-733-9829. We're going to begin with David in Jamestown, Tennessee. You're on the air, David.
Yes, long-time listener. I don't know what's happened lately. There's just so much hate. You're supposed to love your neighbor, and I don't know why all this, you guys are promoting all this, right-wing propaganda. They're killing people and hurting people in the street. But
we're going to comment that.
I've listened to your comment.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you, and thank you for being a long-time listener. I'm going to have Mark comment on that, but just can I encourage you and everybody else to go to the Department of Homeland Security's website, dhs.gov/WOW, W-O-W. dhs.gov/WOW. That's WOW. It stands for worst of the worst. And friends, you'll read apprehension after apprehension, the crimes that they've been convicted of. But Mark, to his question, we're just 30 seconds before the break. What would you like to get in here?
The people who are being hurt, and there are some people being hurt, including ICE agents, but the civilians who are being hurt are assaulting federal officers. Any other context this happened in, it would not be controversial that these people would be arrested. They are training people to assault federal officers, and you kind of get what you're asking for when you do that. Yeah.
So again, friends, the website, and you can read about those that are being apprehended, dhs.gov/WOW, W-O-W, and read the sketches. The individuals tells you what they're being arrested for, their name, and where they were arrested. So you can be the decision maker yourself on that as well. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Lines are packed. Mark Krikorian, our guest, his website cis.org. Stay with us.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewreport.com. Recently, I completed an article entitled 27 Steps by Enemies Foreign and Domestic to Collapse America from Within. Folks, it's taken me the 36 years of work and research to compile this list of 27 historical steps, and I hope you'll go and read it. It's available right now at worldviewtimes.com, worldviewtimes.com. This is important because, as Francis Schaeffer said, many people can see the world in bits and pieces, but not as a big puzzle. Many Americans, and sadly many Christians, are not aware that all of these things we're watching unfold are connected. Whether it's the attack on law enforcement and our military, whether it's the open borders, the infiltration of Marxianity in our churches, the NGOs and other groups that are making partnerships with the government, it's all connected to bring down America from within.
Taking your calls today here on Crosstalk. Mark Krikorian is our guest from the Center for Immigration Studies. We're going to continue with Rod calling in from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Hi, Rod. You're on the air.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I'd like to present this to your guest speaker and ask him to respond. One thing that I haven't heard on this program and other ones that I've listened to, not just your channel, but why aren't they eliminating the reason why the illegals are coming here? It's to make money, and whether to stay here and make that money or take that money back home. So why aren't they cracking down on the people that are hiring these illegals? Because isn't that illegal in itself?
Thank you, Rod.
Yeah, excellent point. This is a point I've been making repeatedly. It's both cracking down on the employers. That's hard to do, though, under the law, because you have to prove they're knowingly hiring illegal aliens. And there are a lot of dodges there, but you can still prove it in a lot of cases. You also have to make the illegal immigrants unemployable. And one of the ways you do that is, for instance, the Social Security Administration knows that there are hundreds of thousands of people in their records whose payroll records that the employer sent in don't match Social Security's files. In other words, they're using fake names, fake numbers. Well, Social Security lets the employers know but doesn't do anything about it. ICE needs to say, look, if you get one of these letters, here's the 3 steps you have to take to make sure it wasn't some paperwork mistake. And if it's still, you got to let them go if you haven't resolved it. And if we show up and you haven't done those things, we're going to assume you knew they were illegal, and we're going to fine and or arrest you accordingly. Absolutely, they need to step it up. Part of the problem is the president isn't a big fan of worksite enforcement. And so that's something that the administration needs to hear more pressure about, especially from its own supporters. And I wish Democrats would complain about it. They just don't want the immigration law enforced, even against businesses.
Let's thank you, Rod, for the call. Good question. Matt is next in Findlay, Ohio. Matt, you're on the air.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for Crosstalk. Long time listener. And I really like what your guest has to say. And just a real quick comment. Unfortunately, it's my opinion, and I think probably you would agree, the left doesn't really listen to Crosstalk, or the left doesn't listen to Newsmax or Fox News, and vice versa. And most of these protesters are protesting, just like your guest was saying about, I don't like Hitler, or let's go protest against the Nazis. Trump's not a Nazi, and I think he's doing a great job, and I think our prayers for him is very important. And I just want to say thank you very much. And by the way, that previous guest, a Border Patrol agent's finger was bit off, and I'll hang up with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And a good point there too, Mark.
No, absolutely. The fact is that the exaggerated rhetoric is really driven by a hatred of Trump. In other words, if Trump said it's really good to take a bath every day, people on the left would just stop showering. They'd stop. Because he said it. Anything he says, they're against. Obama he wasn't great on immigration, but he acknowledged the legitimacy of immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton was actually pretty good about it. Doesn't matter. Now that it's Trump, everybody has, whatever he says, the opposite has to be true.
We've got Mike calling from Abilene, Kansas. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes. My question is, since we're not allowed to talk about biblical subjects in the schools, or the teachers aren't, why it's unlawful to do that? Why doesn't Congress make laws about what they're teaching in the schools that are treasonous and unlawful?
Well, the real problem is that Congress doesn't have any oversight on what is taught in schools. The state legislatures have to do that. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of states, they do have pretty good guidelines of what's supposed to be taught in schools, but you got states run by hard left-wingers like, California or Minnesota. They have authority over their own schools. I mean, Congress can't tell them what to do. So this is a broader sort of social sickness we have in our country that isn't going to be fixed just by Congress passing a law.
Thank you, Mike. And we've got Jim calling from Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm just thinking about all this and how we need to change the narrative that's constantly focused on the two people that lost their lives up in Minneapolis. But Congress has an opportunity when they got these bills before them for funding for law enforcement, ICE, et cetera, to get posters made up and plaster them with pictures of all these young ladies that were raped and killed by illegals like Lake and Riley, and then also a lot of the criminals that have been arrested, and just put them right there in the chambers, right at the House in the Congress, and let everybody see exactly what kind of job ICE is doing, and say, now, ask the Democrats, do you guys support this? Which way do you guys go? Which way do you support?
Sure.
And regarding the previous caller about hiring individuals, there's something called E-Verify. Can you guys elaborate on that at all?
Sure. So, Mark, talk about that. And as far as pictures, DHS is posting the pictures of individuals, but go ahead, Mark, with your response.
Sure. E-Verify is a free online system the federal government runs so that when you as an employer send in your regular Social Security, IRS info, when you hire somebody, you also would check if that person's telling you the truth. Are they authorized to work? And it checks Social Security number, name, date of birth. And it's not perfect. Some illegals are able to get through it, but it eliminates a significant chunk of illegal immigration. It makes it harder to get a job as an illegal. The problem is it's still a voluntary system. So only about half of new hires are screened through the system. The other half aren't. And Congress needs to make it mandatory. That's probably the single most important thing they need to do. Businesses don't want it, and Democrats say that they're all for it, but only after every single illegal alien has been amnestied. Then there won't be any more illegal aliens for E-Verify to find. So it's an important issue. No question. It should be the number one thing that Congress is considering, and it should be the number one thing the administration is talking about. Again, though, the problem is the president isn't a big fan of E-Verify, and somebody needs to get to him about that.
Jim, thank you for the call. And that closing music has come up saying we are out of time. We apologize to others on hold. Mark Krikorian, our guest today, his website, cis.org. Mark, as always, thanks for carving out the hour to join our listeners today.
Happy to do it anytime. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mark Krikorian from Center for Immigration Studies. Folks, sign up for their email list. Stay informed. Thank you for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.